Love my eggplant. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to start eggplant seeds. Now these are both the Black Beauty variety. It is a very classic large eggplant. One is a fresh packet of seeds I bought, and the others are seeds that I saved, but I'm not sure those are viable. And I don't want to risk only starting those. So I'm going to plant those to see if they germinate and plant the ones that I know will be good. So we're going to use 2-inch soil blockers, and I've already made them with this soil blocker, and I've used the 10 by 10 Bootstrap Farmer, very sturdy, durable, strong tray. And 25 squares will fit in there. Now these are heirloom seeds. And what I did last summer is I left the first fruit to grow, and I left it for the whole summer. And right before the first freeze, I harvested it for its seeds. So we'll see if those seeds are viable. Now you want to start your eggplant seeds inside on a heat mat. They require it to be 75 to 90 degrees to germinate. I went ahead and put them under lights, but light's not required at this point. But heat is. The lights are on a timer for 14 hours on, but the heat mat is plugged in to run 24 hours a day. It's not going to go off and on. Now you're going to start your eggplant seeds now, 8 to 12 weeks before your last freeze. And typically our average last freeze is at the end of April. So we have 11 weeks right now before our last freeze, so it's perfect timing. When they're about 2 inches with well-developed roots, we're going to pot them up into bigger pots, about this size. Then we'll plant them outside in the garden towards the end of May. You want to wait 3 to 4 weeks past your last freeze. You're going to plant them a little bit later than your peppers. They're very sensitive to the cold. I also want big, strong eggplants because we typically out in the garden have flea beetles, and they will just put tiny pinprint holes in those leaves, and if the plants are small, it totally destroys them. But tall plants, even though the leaves get eaten on, it doesn't hurt the plant. So we want big, strong plants to put out into the garden. Now, like I said, they don't require light to germinate, but they do require moisture. So I like to put a little bit of soil on top of the hole in the middle of the soil block. Now, if it's warm enough, these should germinate in about 7 to 14 days. I did about half and half. 2 rows of my saved seed and 3 rows of the new fresh seed from Baker Creek. Now, if they all germinate, I'm going to have plenty of plants to share with the community. And never water with cold water. It's going to cause cold shock, and the plants are going to die. I always have several watering cans filled up with water, and I leave it in this warm room. So always water with warm water. Good morning, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to pot up Black Beauty eggplant. Now I've already prepared some 4-inch pots. And I'm using Pro Mix organic garden potting soil. I like it because it has microfungi that colonize the root system and help develop a strong, healthy plant. Now, eggplant needs to be started 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost. I started mine 11 weeks before my last frost. These seeds were started 4 weeks ago. The seeds germinated in 7 days on a heat mat covered with a humidity dome. Now, these 10 are from my own saved seeds, and I'm excited because this is the first time I have successfully saved eggplant seed. The rest of these were fresh seed that I bought. So these seedlings are 3 weeks old. Now the seeds, when they germinated, I stole their heat mat for the okra, and they were not happy. This furnace room tends to be warm in February and at the beginning of March. The furnace runs constantly. But this February, we haven't had the extreme cold temperatures like normal, and many days the furnace hasn't run. So they've required more heat. So I bought 2 more heat mats. And I'm going to leave them on the heat mat. And that's one of the reasons those pots are so crowded. I want them to stay on there. And I don't have any more heat mats, so they're going to have to share. Now, eggplant grows best from 70 to 80 degrees. And this room tends to run 65 to 75. So a little bit more heat helps. I want big, strong plants by mid-May. Now they're going to grow inside under lights for 7 more weeks. Once they get bigger and bushier, I will spread them out to give them more room to grow. So if you notice, some of the ones with bigger leaves have already blocked the light from the small ones. But they're going to do better now that they're potted up. And if they flower inside, I'll remove those. I want the energy to grow into a strong plant. We don't want any fruit right now. Now here in the Mid-Atlantic, in north central Maryland, flea beetles are a problem. They will destroy a small eggplant seedling. If the seedling's small and weak, or if you plant it out too early when it's cold, they'll just be gone. I've learned to grow bigger, stronger plants. Those can survive the flea beetles. And they'll still put pinprick holes in the leaves, but the plant itself won't die if it's big and strong. And I have to make sure and wait until it's warm enough. We're going to start hardening these off, bringing them outside several hours a day and increasing the time after the last frost, early May. And we're going to plant them out into the garden 2 to 4 weeks after the last frost. Here, that means mid-May or after Mother's Day. Now, when you water, avoid using really cold water. Here in the basement, the water comes directly from underground, and it is ice cold. So I always make sure I use warm water. Good morning, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. We're past our last frost date, and we're having a heat wave. It's time to harden off our Black Beauty eggplant. Now these plants are 10 weeks old. I potted them up 7 weeks ago. Today they're only going to be outside 2 hours, and they're going to come back in the kitchen under these lights. And then every day we're going to increase the amount of time they stay outside. Now, just like the other seedlings, they're going to start hardening off in this protected area near the house, on this shelf. Now the goal is to be able to be out in full sun. So every day we'll increase the exposure to the sun, just like these seedlings over here. Now these were happily growing in the warm furnace room, but recently I had to move them here to this cooler room because the gas company needs to come check the meter, and I didn't want them walking through that room and damaging any of the plants. So it's time to get them upstairs. It's going to be in the 80s this week. Last week we were having frost during the night. Now if you're concerned about the yellow leaves, you just trim them off. This is due to the stress from moving to this cooler room. We've just passed our last frost date. I like to wait 2 weeks more to harden them off. But like I said, these 80-degree temperatures this week are going to be just perfect. Eggplant prefers temperature 70 to 85 degrees. Now I'm going to wait in the morning until it gets above 60 to bring them outside. You're going to want to harden off your eggplant, getting them used to the sun, wind, and the weather, 7 to 10 days. I'm going to put them in the garden 2 to 4 weeks after the last frost. Now this net is going to protect from digging squirrels. But they all need a good drink of water first. Any that I am not able to use, I'll give away free to the community. Out here behind the garage, on this community shelf I've set up. Good afternoon and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time to plant out our eggplant. The variety is Black Beauty. Now these plants are 12 weeks old and they've already hardened off for 11 days. Now you want to space your eggplant 18 to 24 inches apart. If you plant in rows, space those 24 to 36 inches apart. Now these plants are going to grow to be about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. Eggplants are cold sensitive, so wait until your soil is above 60 degrees before planting. That tends to be 2 to 4 weeks after your last frost. Now, Black Beauty has a tender skin, but a tough skin can be caused by cold nights below 60 or hot days above 95. They do prefer full sun. Here in north central Maryland, flea beetles are a problem. So you want to wait until your seedlings get 5 to 8 inches tall before planting, and then they'll be able to survive any flea beetle damage. They like rich soil, so add some compost when you plant. Then 4 to 6 weeks after planting, go ahead and give them a slow release fertilizer. Plant your seedlings level with the soil. Don't plant them really deeply. Now, if you notice, these have gotten root bound. They've really been ready to get into the ground, but we just had a spell of cold, wet weather, and I couldn't film in that. So if your plants are root bound, gently tease apart the roots. And that's going to prevent them from keep growing around and around. It'll help them to spread out into the soil. Now I am going to net these because I don't want the squirrels digging at these onions nearby. So I'm not going to surround them with hardware cloth like I normally do to block the squirrels. But I am going to put on a cage because the onions are starting to bulb up and the leaves are really tall. I don't want them flopping over on top of the eggplant. Now the cages are going to have to go off later because the fruit will get stuck in that confined space. The eggplant will need some kind of support. As it grows, the soil is really soft and the heavy fruit tends to pull the plant over. Now what am I going to do with the rest of these? Well, I'm going to give them free to my community. Now eggplant prefer 1 to 2 inches of water every week, but they like deep watering less frequently. So I'm going to water today and make sure they're watered every day for 7 days because the roots aren't yet established. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It is the beginning of August and time for our first eggplant harvest. The variety is Black Beauty and the fruit average 5 to 6.5 inches. Mosquito, excuse me. So many of these are ready. I transplanted them out in mid-May and they really struggled in this cold spring. They stayed small, but we've had several heat waves and they've just taken off. Some are 4 feet tall. The average size is 2 to 3.5 feet, but mine have gotten to be 4 feet. Wow. One reason they grew so well is because I planted them in full sun and I spaced them the proper distance apart. Like the pepper plants, which are right here behind me, which I'm trying not to break, I watered these eggplant transplants for 7 days, but haven't watered since. Now, we had a lot of rain in the spring, but after June 1st, we haven't had much rain. But spring helped it send down deep roots, and it's been managing our dry spell well. Eggplants like rich soil, and this area is full of organic matter. I raised quail here for 4 years, so I have not fed the eggplant. Now, if the fruit looks dry or off color or stressed out, especially along the bottom, I go ahead and harvest it, no matter what size it is, because experience has shown me it's not going to get any bigger. Another reason I suspect they've grown so large is they've been protected from flea beetle damage. So the onions are right on the other side of them, and I didn't want the squirrels digging in my onions, so I netted this whole area, and a benefit was it has protected these eggplant, and they've had minimal flea beetle damage. Now this plant is stressed because it's been moved from the grandkids' alley garden. I was just overwhelmed with that garden. It was requiring way too much water. It was so dry because it's a raised bed. So I think it was 4 or 5 days ago, I moved it over here and I'm seeing new leaves. Now as the old leaves die off, I've been trimming them, but new leaves are definitely growing. It has a few small fruit, and I'm going to go ahead and harvest those because the plant needs to put its energy into growing new leaves. Now look at this one. These are not Black Beauty eggplant. It's a good example of what's been happening since 2020, when more people got interested in growing food. Seed companies got overwhelmed with orders, so they have hired more small farms to grow for them because seed companies don't grow their own seeds. So this means that the seed I bought in 2023, the Black Beauty seeds, had some other variety mixed in. Whoever grew those seeds probably grew them too close to another variety of eggplant, and it cross-pollinated. I have no idea what they are, but I'm going to harvest them and enjoy them. That bottom tells me that it's not going to grow any larger. If I wait for these small varieties to get bigger, they'll get tough. So I'm going to harvest most of these. because it's been such a dry summer, some of the bottom leaves, they will turn yellow, and I just prune those off to make the plant look better and to cut down on pests being drawn in. This is another one of the grandkids' eggplants. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest these fruit. There's plenty more to harvest later. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. We have a break in the rain. We've already had 2 inches and the worst is yet to come in about an hour and a half. So let's take a chance to do our second harvest of eggplant. Now remember, this variety is Heirloom Black Beauty, and it's grown from my own saved seeds. Last year was the first time I've successfully saved eggplant seeds. I wanted to harvest them now for a couple of reasons. Before the heavy rains break the plants from the heavy fruit, and tomorrow while it's raining, I want to be able to make some videos to show you how I prepare and preserve eggplant. Now, do you remember this unknown variety? Hang on, it's wet out here. This is from bought seeds that I had bought last year, and that means some odd eggplant variety got mixed in. Now, I used the ones that I harvested, and the skin's really hard, and inside it's full of seeds. Fortunately, the seeds are pretty soft. So I'm going to harvest this second one and then harvest some small Black Beauty eggplants and show you how I stuffed them. Oh, the mosquitoes are terrible. Wow, there are so many fruit. So I'm gonna go ahead and harvest the big ones, of course, and the small ones for stuffing, and then I'm gonna leave the medium-sized ones. Remember, they started these seeds indoors in February under lights in the basement. And I transplanted them mid-May. I think they were about 6 inches tall. Then we had a cold spring, and they stayed really small. They didn't really grow, and some of their leaves fell off because they were stressed out. But now, wow, they're more than 4 feet tall. This has been my best eggplant year ever. Bee is already back to work in just this short break from the rain. It's good. It means there's going to be more fruit later. Wow, there are so many. That's okay, because I love my eggplant. Now, the 7 days after I transplanted them, I watered them, but after that, I haven't watered and I haven't fed them. They've taken care of themselves. Now we're going to bring this in the house and we'll just leave them on the counter overnight. They'll be okay out of the fridge. Got a few more still developing, and after this rain is finished, more flowers will grow and we'll get more fruit. Curious if this 4 inches of rain that's coming is going to make the fruit swell.